Yeah, you're live. 1 more minute, and we start talking in 1 minute.
Should I mute myself?
Sure, but there's no echo or anything. Okay, great. So we start today about the second talk today in the hyper casual track. So we all know that in hyper casual it's about volume, right? And to hit a certain volume of number of tests is what you need to do before getting your hyper casual hit game. And for this, you need speed. But how do you get speed without really growing your team by, I don't know, tenfold or fivefold? You need to keep it at a sustainable cost, right? So these questions are also part of our daily conversations on Sunday, where I work, and Christoph is the managing director of Sunday. And I know firsthand from our daily conversation how passionate Christoph is about efficiency. Maybe it comes from the German side. I don't know.
Maybe it's a German mindset. Yeah.
Efficiency without compromising quality, which I think is the key to achieve these successes. So I would like to introduce today Christoph, the managing director of Sunday, the leading hyper-casual publisher based out of Germany, who is also happens to be the sponsor for this hyper-casual track. So thank you, Christoph. And he's here today to talk about improving output and quality for hyper-casual studios. So the floor is yours, Christoph.
Thank you very much, Bala. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. So yeah, I will get right started by sharing my screen. And I think we are in. So yeah, welcome to this talk. As Bala already mentioned, it's about improving your output and quality for you as a hyper-casual studio. And first of all, I would say a little bit about Sunday. So what is Sunday actually? Bala already mentioned that we are leading hyper-casual publisher out of Germany. So we are now up to 30 people actually working here in the office, but also remotely from several locations. We have people working on the product side, so in-house development. We have people working on the publishing side together with external studios to make our hit games with our partner studios happen. Then we have a growth team that is focusing on user acquisition, marketing, optimizing the monetization, so really scaling the hit game to an international audience and making it super, super profitable for us and also for our partner studio. And then we have a team just fully dedicated to marketing creative. So they are constantly coming up with new videos for our hit games, keeping them alive, keeping them fresh. As you know, in hyper casual, the creatives are really, really key to your growth strategy. So we have a full dedicated team there of several people who just do this all day. And yeah, we have a super diverse background from many different nationalities. I think even 1/3 of the company is Turkish and 1/3 is German, and the rest of the company is really spread out from all different countries of the world. And so we had a successful market entry in late 2020 with our first hit game, Cat Escape, which is up to 48 million downloads now. I just checked it in our analytics suite, so almost scratching at the 50 million, soon to be there. Then we had 2 more hit games in 2021. Plaquette, our first external publishing hit, and we recently also launched Tape Puzzle, which is up to 1 million downloads now. So as you can see, we are quickly growing in games and numbers, but also we doubled our team size this year already, so growing from 15 people to now it's almost 30 by end of the year. And because we have this background in developing our own games, first, our publishing values are all about developer empowerment. So what does it mean actually? We know how hard it is and how difficult it is and how also exhausting it can be to make a hit game. You know, you need to fail and try so many times until you finally get there. And, it's often a struggle emotionally, but also financially to get there, right? So what we want to do is we want to share our learnings that we gathered from our own development experience, but also help the publisher, help the developers to become the best hit makers that they can by giving this all this information. And also, this is why I want to do this presentation, right? That's what we really want to focus on, making our partner studios as successful as possible. Also super important to mention is that we are part of the Apply group. And AppLike is a global leader in reward apps and remote monetization. And there we can use many best-in-class in-house solutions for user acquisition and monetization that have been built up by them over the last year. So we're really able to sit on top of their infrastructure and use a lot of the things that already were developed and processes that already exist there. Cool. So friend, let's look at who's the target audience of this talk actually. So I want to reach with this talk small to medium-sized hyper casual studios with around like 1 year or more of experience. You already tried out some prototypes, you know the basics of hyper casual, you know what kind of works and what doesn't work, but also you're kind of struggling in some areas still. But anyway, I think any studio, regardless of the size or level of seniority, can take something away from this. And maybe if it's just one thing that you take away from this and this improves your output like 30%, then it's already a good result for me with this presentation, right? So let's say you have your perfect idea, you thought of something, you know, you had like this flash of insight and you say, like, oh, okay, that's the game that I want to build. I really believe in this. Your team is super hyped up to finally build that. But now before you start, you should actually ask you some questions. And the first one is, how does this game fit into the market? So it's super, super critical that before you start developing and you just rush into your idea, you ask yourself, hey, where does this game, this idea actually fit on this chart, right? So what you see here on the left side, you have, wait, I think I can even do the laser pointer. Perfect. So here you have this reward that you can get out of the game. So this is a low potential for reward. This is high profitability, high reward. And here's also the risk of failure for this project, right? So this is super low risk of failure. And here, this is like a very, very risky project with a very low percentage that you can actually win this, right? And on this chart, you see these 4 different items here. And let's start at the very low bottom here, right? So that's the copy of the game. So a copy is really, you just take something that's currently trending in the charts and you just copy it one by one, you just clone it. Maybe you do like a little bit of changes to it, right? And changing some colors, changing the character, but essentially it's just the same game or like a little bit of reskin maybe, right? So usually from our experience, but also a lot of other publishers will tell you this as well. Yes, these are super low risk. There's nothing that you can really do wrong there. You just copy all the mechanics and all the gameplay, but also the reward that you can expect from this is very, very low. So from our opinion, this is like maybe when you just want to get things going first and learn Unity, you know, this could be a nice project to get into the development, but once you take making hit games seriously, just avoid directly copying games. It's not worth the time invest, really. And then the second item that we see here is a twist. That means what you try to do there is you look at games that are currently trending, that are on the charts or that have recently been on the charts, and you try to find your own variation of this, right? And what we have seen so far in 2021 are several versions of, for example, the female runner, right? Early January, February, this was popularized with the games like High Heels. And then a lot of new spawns of this idea popped up where it's about suddenly not about the shoes, it's about fingernails, you know. So it's taking an existing successful concept and putting one twist on it, like just changing one thing. And yeah, this is a pretty low risk way to do things, but also usually what we see on the market, these twists of the original concept, they only actually reach a fraction of the downloads of the original. It still can work out, can be a nice project, but you cannot expect that this is going to be super groundbreaking. So where we see a little bit more potential for reward, but also what is more difficult to pull off is actually a mashup. And a mashup is when you combine 2 or more previously successful concepts from previous games. So what usually works there really well, like this analytical approach to game design. That means you take one maybe currently trending mechanic and combine it with a previous one that was trending maybe 2 years ago, right? So also really looking at the bottom of the charts, what's not currently being served in the market. And this is really like fitting puzzle pieces together, right? When sometimes they just match and you get something good out of it. But when you try to force them into each other, although they then fit, like the gameplay that results from this can be really crappy. And so it's a difficult thing to pull off, like inventing something completely new by combining two successful previous things. But if you can do it and you have the game design skills and the experience behind it and you can pull it off, then this can be super, super rewarding, and it really can become a new hit. There are several publishers on the market that are really, really good at this analytical approach. So in theory, you can just create a Excel file, right, and put down all the mechanics here and then all the mechanics here, and then just try to combine them in the grid and see what comes out of it. But again, if you try to force it too much, there might be something that it's not really working or feels awkward. And then on the very high risk and very high reward level, there you have these like revolutionary concepts that really change the market, that introduce new trends. Yes, this stuff can work. And if it works, then this is really amazing. But be aware that you're going into really high risk there. And usually for the majority of studios, especially when you're not like have a super experienced team and you know exactly what you're doing and you have had several hits before, try to focus maybe on this area here in the middle here. This is usually like the sweet spot where you want to be with your idea, and maybe you can try like 1 or 2 super revolutionary ideas per year. But I wouldn't make it the core strategy of your studio, right? So you can try this once in a while. Also, please talk to your publisher about this before, like just get some feedback from them. It's like really, really stupid, or it actually might work. And then you're good to go with this. Then what you hear a lot also from your publisher is usually to avoid classical gaming themes. And to be honest, for many people starting out in hyper casual, this sounds very counterintuitive, right? When your publisher tells you like, hey, don't use pixel art in a game, avoid, fantasy themes, zombie themes, any science fiction or whatever, right? So because when you look at the Steam top charts, for example, these are all the successful games, right? They have stuff like pixel art and space and zombies and fantasy, right? Also, even when you look at the iOS top grossing, so the games that really earn the most money, right? You have shooters and you have pixel stuff and you have even Japanese RPGs, right? So why do hyper-casual publishers tell you should avoid these classical gaming themes? Although you see they are super successful in these charts here and these games work. So what you really have to understand there is that hyper-casual games only really work in this market because of how the ad networks work. So all the ad networks like out there, for example, like Iron Source, like Unity, Edjo, and so on, right? So they work in a certain way that you can place your CPI bid, right? And when you look at ad monetized games, so hyper-casual games are, of course, completely ad monetized usually, you can get a lifetime value of around 30 cents to $1 in the US, right? So this is like an average time, an average span. Of course, there are games that are lower and higher than this, but usually your game would fall somewhere in this range, while you have games that are super in-app heavy, right? So when we look back at here, this Clash Royale and Roblox and Forever, you can really expect them to have a huge, at least factor 10 higher LTV than the ad monetized hyper-casual games. And all of these in-app purchase heavy games try to target a core gamer audience, right? So this is basically everyone who owns a phone worldwide. And inside of that, there's a small group which are your core gamers. So these are the people that grew up with games in their childhood, that maybe own a PlayStation or a gaming PC, and they really want the same gaming experience on their phone, and they're willing to pay for it, right? This is their hobby. They're willing to spend money on this, right? So, of course, all of these in-app purchase heavy games try to target this super valuable user group here, right? And this, of course, drives the competition within this audience up really, really high because an in-app purchase heavy game can pay maybe like $12 for an install, while a hyper casual game may only be able to pay $25. So this, of course, is not sustainable for an ad monetized game. And that means that a hyper casual game should always work outside of this core gamer audience. So that's why in hyper casual, we build games for non-gamers. We build games for everyone out there in the world, right? If it's picked up by someone from the core gaming audience, that's nice, but that's not actually like who we are targeting with this. And that's also why we need to pick a theme that works for everyone that has a phone, and not just for people who played Age of Empires or Halo in their childhood, right? That's the key difference there. Then let's go into the development phase now. And there's also a lot of things that can go wrong and many, many mistakes that you can avoid. So I think the biggest problems that we see when we work with studios that are just starting out in development, they get super attached to their idea, and they develop a prototype, and then we test it with them, or they test it with another publisher, and then they get let's call it mediocre to bad day one retention of around like 21%, right? That's a concept that wouldn't work on the market, and then they start iterating on this, right? So they have this idea, maybe we add just one feature, and we add a funny gun to the shooter or whatever, right? And they add this, and the KPIs improve a little bit. Maybe it goes up to 23%. Then they say, okay, we already have this improvement. Now let's just add more levels, more skins, more enemies, and whatever, right? Adding more content, and yes, they are able to improve a little bit more. Goes up to 26%. Then adding more skins, more content, and whatever. A meta game, a shop. This even gets it a little bit up more, but it's still a dead project in the end, right? This is a game that is not sustainable on the market. It won't be profitable for the publisher or for the developer. So in the end, you have to kill it. But still, you spend like 2 months on it. It costs you a lot of time and a lot of money. And this is really a worst case scenario that we see for studios that are just starting out. And a lot better approach that we always recommend, and that where we try to coach our studios to, maybe you start with the same idea and it's crappy like before, but then we really focus on, okay, let's completely change the concept. Like let's go back to the drawing board, use the idea that you had, but maybe twist it, right? Like let's use a completely different setting, like different game mechanics, different goals in the levels design, right? Then, okay, maybe this works a little bit better, but it's still not good. It's still not where we say, okay, this is good to iterate on. Back to the drawing board again, changing the concept again, until you finally have something, okay, 38%, this kind of sticks, there's something there, and then you start adding more content, doing variations, doing level balancing, and that's where really squeeze out the last optimization stuff that you can do in the game. You get it up to 45% day one, and then you have it, and then all the stuff that you usually did, like adding a shop, adding skins, and so on, you can do this during launch, right? You don't need to put this stuff in while you're still trying to figure out what the gameplay looks like. Only when you really nailed it and it looks good and it feels good, then you put on the meta game and all the other stuff that you want to have in there. What is also super important, once you reach this area here, where you really do variations, adding content, level balancing, and so on, that you have a stable development environment. Also, a critical point when we work together with junior studios, what we often see, they just jump right in, especially when they are working in a team. It can get very chaotic. And this is fine for the beginning, for the prototyping phase, but there needs to be a certain phase where you need to stabilize your code base and your development environment. And so as soon as you have good and promising KPIs and you want to start optimizing through different variations, for example, of the theme, of colors, of the camera, different ideas of level design, making them shorter or longer, adding or removing obstacles, right? Once you want to do all of this stuff, it's really, really important that you use a versioning system. We recommend that you use Git. All of the versioning systems out there, there are many, many of them. They all kind of suck. They're all not great. They're all not easy to use. But Git is still the one that sucks the least, let's put it like this. And it's just as for a good development of your career, just get used to it. You will need it at some point. especially when you want to become more professional and you want to work together in a larger team. It's very, very important. Okay, then let's say it all worked out and now you have a hit. So what happens then? Of course, now is really time to celebrate. Together with your publisher, you landed something amazing. It's maybe a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Maybe this pays the bills for the rest of your life. Who knows? Let's hope, definitely. But the work is not over here because your game is actually not finished, right? So you still are in a very early phase of the game, and now you need to optimize the lifetime value of this game together with your publisher. So now it's also becoming a more analytical approach to development. And now all of the stuff that I talked to you about before, the stable development environment and using Git, this becomes now even more important, because now when you do a mistake in the game, you introduce a bug or an error in game design, then you really lose a lot of money, right? Before that, in the testing phase, it doesn't hurt so much when there's a bug in a test, right? But when your publisher is spending tens of thousands of dollars every day on the game, then one mistake that makes the revenue drop in 30%, this can really hurt you both then a lot. And that's something that you want to avoid. Also, all the changes that you do to the game, you need to do more analytically. You need to A/B test more, and just take a step-by-step iterative approach and not be super crazy about your ideas anymore. Then what happens more than often, right, is that you fail actually. So success is super rare and hyper casual. You just have to get accustomed to failing a lot and get to know this feeling. It's just what naturally happens. It happens to everybody. But at least you should get something out of this failure, right? I think the worst thing that you can do is just fail and learn nothing out of it and just to jump to the next project and do exactly the same mistakes again. So what we have developed here internally at Sunday is a retrospective. Every time we fail, we look at our game prototype that we built and we try to analyze why we failed, and we try to learn as much as we can from that failure. So we analyze the best performing and the worst performing videos together with the team, and then we all write down why we think this was not successful on 3 different categories. So first of all, we have gameplay readability, right? And then it's really about the objects and the characters and mechanics in the game. Do you understand? How do you control it? What are the goals that you need to have there? What are the challenges in the game? How can you die? How can you win, right? And so it really needs to be super, super clear. Like a good test is always squinting your eye, like you watch the video and you squint your eyes together and you still try to understand what's going on in the game. And when it's like super confusing and fuzzy and there's a lot of stuff going on, then this is probably an issue of gameplay readability. You have only 3 seconds that the player understands in your ad what the game is about. If you don't use these 3 seconds wisely, then it's very likely that the marketability phase is going to fail. Then also regarding the camera, there's a lot of different things that we can try there, right? Different perspectives and using the camera in a way that makes the gameplay more understandable, trying different variations there, and just like maybe tiny variations to the angle. So maybe like you can do big changes like using a top-down camera or first-person camera, but also like even when you like have a top-down camera, maybe shifting the angle a little bit, like by 50 degrees, 30 degrees, whatever might work there. And then the third category is the theme and the toy or the character. And there it's important that you try different ideas, different themes. Also ask yourself like, hey, maybe what we use there, maybe when you focus on, aliens or orcs, was this like too niche, too nerdy? Was it too unusual? Do we need to change it to something that's more broadly appealing or something that's more trending on social media right now, right? And just see if you also had different moments inside of the gameplay that you showed, right? Maybe you just showed the super fun and super exciting stuff, but on many ads, it can actually be that the frustrating gameplay converts best, right? So there, especially in puzzle games, we often see that super frustrating gameplay where the solution is obvious, but the player that is controlling the game in the video ad is doing really stupid movements, and this creates a frustrating feeling in the person that watches the ad. this converts a lot better than showing just the success and the positive emotions of the game, right? And then it's super critical that you gather all the stuff from your team, everything that you wrote down, and define clear actions, what you want to change next time, and also share those together with your team. Then also, like after you're finished with the project, just go through it and extract every art asset that you built for it. So what we do here, we have one big Unity project. We have it organized by scenes. So one scene, there are all the characters. One scene, there are all like 3 models in there. And then we just put it all together and we scavenge through the old project and extract all the models that we built there and put it in one scene. And we reuse this a lot. This really saves a lot of time. The chance that you want to reuse one of those assets that you had in your project is quite high, actually. And it's just a nice time saver. It only takes 1 hour to go through it and extract all of this. And exactly the same is true for your code and your gameplay. So, for example, when you tried a runner before, why don't you just strip it down, remove all the colors and models from it, and just have the bare minimum project? And then you can use it as a base for your next runner project, right? So it's not completely wasted effort that you had in there. You're always going to try a new runner at some point. Maybe you had some cool obstacles in it, right? Some rotating flames, whatever, right? So why don't you just save them as a prefab, and then you can just import it into your next project, and it might come in handy and save you a lot of time. Or maybe you developed a cool resource management system for an idle arcade game, right? Where you can do a lot of trading of resources, buying and selling stuff, right? And you could put this actually into a library. Who knows, like when the next resource management library and system would be needed there, right? So these are all things that we have tried for ourselves, and all of them work really, really successfully for us. Maybe it's like this German mentality, like Bala mentioned before, that we want to be as efficient as possible. I just want to share this with you to get the same efficiency into your studio. Cool. That's it from my side. I think now it's time for questions. If you're interested to work with us, by the way, we have a lot of open job positions. I don't know if I can spoiler this already, but we are looking into opening an office in India by the end of the year, so that we will also be able to hire directly in India. So we're looking to set up an office there. And if you want to work with us on the publishing side, just write us at publishing@sunday.gg. Thank you very much. I hope this was fun and informative for you.
Thanks, Christoph, again for your time and all the knowledge share. I'm sure the dev community and all the attendees, take inspiration and learning from it. Let's look at some of the questions. What's the time frame generally for a game? Do you want to take it?
Time frame regarding prototype phase, I guess, right? So I think it's really important that you have to set yourself a constraint that really helps a lot. And this also depends a bit on the complexity of the game. If you want to try a super simple runner, maybe you should try to definitely make it in 1 or 2 weeks to have at least a prototype where you can create an ad from, right? So this is a good time frame. If you want to try something more complex or more experimental, you can maybe extend it by 1 or 2 weeks. But as a studio, you should have some, self-discipline and say like, hey, this is our ideas. What is the minimum amount of time that we would require for this? And usually we end up around 1 or 2 weeks for the most ideas.
Great. Best technology for creating hyper-casual games? Unity. There's no chance.
Yeah, that's just the market standard, right? There are many new tools popping up, but yeah, Unity is just the most powerful one.
Can partner studios get their hands on that art library for quick prototype development only to be submitted to Sunday team?
Yeah, definitely. We can talk about this. Like when we enter an agreement with each other, testing agreement, and we want some support for us, then we can definitely share a lot of our assets if that's possible.
Yeah. Do you work in RPG games? Or I will rephrase the question as, what's your view on RPG in hyper-casual context?
Yeah, so I think what we have seen recently on the market is a lot of this development into idle arcade, right? So I would say like pure RPG, probably not very compatible with the market itself, but we have to hyper casualize it. So we have to take the most simple and basic elements of RPG and, have some basic character upgrades or weapon upgrades or whatever, and then have some kind of progression loop in there. So if you're interested in making RPG work for hyper casual, this idle arcade direction, and there are many successful games on the market already, this works pretty well, I think. But also it's a more complex project. So there I would say you probably need to, it's a little bit more risky and it takes more time to make it work.
Yeah, and if you're starting out, I would definitely not pick that.
Yes, definitely not. Like when you're it's your first game, don't do it. Just maybe when you have 1 or 2 years experience, then this is something that you might try.
How do you version control 3D models in large files?
LFS, large file system. Check it out. Just Google it. It helps you a lot.
How many games do you guys test on an average? A lot.
Yeah. Yeah, so it really depends. Like if you're talking about the publishing side or our in-house production, right? And in our in-house production, it always also depends. Like if we are blocked with the development of a game, then of course maybe we are focusing on this like for several weeks, and so we don't try so many new concepts. But when we have a phase where we don't work on something new, then we are really able to per team at least test like 5 to 10 ideas per month.
What kind of level balancing shown in one of the slides we should test with?
Yeah, so when you work with us, then you can provide level data. That means we are able to track user progression in the levels and also see exactly where they drop off, and also if they drop off because the level is too hard. So what you need to look at is your level funnel. So everybody enters at level 1, and then maybe 98% finish level 2, maybe 96 finish level 3, and then maybe you see a huge drop off to level 4, and this is then a level that you need to work on. And then you need to understand, okay, why are people dropping off in this level? Is it too difficult? Is it too boring? Or maybe you just kick it out completely because it's just not good. But look at the level funnel. Where are people dropping off in your game? And then try to modify it or kick it out completely.
Do you use internal analytics tool or external tools?
Yes, so that's a really nice question because we have developed this all in-house, also with the help of our sister companies from the Apply Group. So we have a really, really customized view just built for hyper casual. We used to work with tools like Game Analytics in the past, but now we really have it all in-house, and we have like first-party data there and really customized to our own needs.
Okay, I think Shazad wants to really ask this question. He's typing it many times, so I'm going to pick it up. How do we come up with unique game ideas?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, like that's basically the first tip that I showed, right? Like the super easy is just cloning something, but also you cannot expect a lot of potential from this. And then if your game idea is too unique, this can also be the case. It's too edgy, too niche. This can be also super dangerous. So our recommendation is either you take something that's already working at your own twist, maybe an idea from another game or from social media, or you try to combine something completely unrelated, like two completely new game mechanics with each other, right? So something that maybe was successful in the trends 2 years ago with another mechanics from casual games, and it's like fitting these puzzle pieces together. It's more difficult, and you need good game design skills to actually make it feel good. But these two approaches are usually the ones that have a good risk-reward ratio.
Great. We have a few more minutes and many questions coming up, but I'm going to pick up this one. When or how do you know whether a prototype has potential and should we fine-tune further, or should we kill it, or should we redo it entirely?
Okay, so the most important there are really these early KPIs, right? So what we look at in the beginning is, of course, the marketability of your game. So if the click-through rate is good, if the installs per mil IPM is good, if the CPI is good, right? And this already gives you a good idea. And when your game has a really bad marketability, kill it immediately, right? There's no way you should really iterate on this. When you're in like a good area, so maybe your marketability, your CTR is between 5 to 6, 7, 8%. That's something where you can iterate. And if it's above that, even better, right? Then you can really start on developing a full product out of it. And then in the next phase, it's important to optimize for retention and playtime. And usually retention where it starts getting interesting is around 30%, and everything above that is even better. So like really good potential is 40%, but of course the more the better. And playtime, we usually look at 10 minutes plus on the first day.
Well, there are many questions again about how do we come up with good ideas. Christoph already answered that, but I would also highly recommend that you watch a talk from yesterday from Andre Nola, which talks specifically about ideation techniques. This will all be on YouTube by December 15th. I would highly recommend to watch that. Do you have a timeline of coming to India? I'm not sure whether you talked about it in your presentation.
We were trying to make it this year, definitely. I think it's a good chance that we will be still this year in India. Yeah. But of course, like if you want to work with us, you can already do it. But we won't have an office there yet.
This is an interesting one. What's your view on good graphics or narrative in ads? Is it a bad thing or good thing for hyper casual games?
So it really depends what you mean with that, So good graphics, when it's hyper realistic graphics, I would be careful with that, because usually what we're seeing, like the best practice in the hyper casual is keeping the graphics simple, easy to understand, and just a very high contrast between player character and background. When you do like complete realistic 3D environments with high detailed car and whatever, first of all, you run in performance problems into your game, of course, but also this is usually not what is converting very well, because this is also just targeting this core gamer audience. And these are also games that look like they're difficult to pick up, right? So what you want in hyper casual is the player to think, oh, this looks easy, this looks very nice and approachable, I could play that. From my personal experience, I don't have so much time. And when I see a game like this that looks hyper realistic, I think, oh my God, they probably have like a 20-minute onboarding to this game. I don't even want to invest my time into this, because this is going to be painful for me to pick up, right? So that's not the direction that you want to take. Same is for narrative, right? Yes, there is a gamer audience that wants to spend hours and hours going deep into a story, and they really enjoy this. But this is also really like your core gamer audience. There are narrative-driven games in hyper casual, but they're very simple. They don't go too deep. They're just like nice, simple stories that maybe take like 20 to 30 seconds, and then it's just going on to the next story, right? And they're also they don't have such a deep development. They're like staying on the surface, and they're just fun and entertaining.
What's your comments on the future of hyper casual mobile gaming?
My favorite question. So it's definitely like the only thing that I can for certain answer there is that it's spreading out more, right? So I've talked about this LTV spread between 30 cents and $1, and I think looking back 2 years, all the games were more in the middle of this, and now what you see is like there's a broader spectrum of very low LTV hyper casual games and rather high LTV hyper casual games. That means, your typical simulation games that, arts and crafts, design your own sneakers, skateboards, whatever, which are just like these fun experiences that you play around with a little bit, but are very, very marketable and easy to pick up. These are on the lower spectrum. And then on the higher LTV spectrum are these games that have more hybrid casual elements like RPG progression, right? And what we definitely can see is like that hyper casual is spreading out in more and more areas, and everything is getting hyper casualized, and like just the idea how a hyper casual game looked like 3 or 4 years ago is just not valid anymore, because everything can be hyper casual game.
Well, I have this is interesting. I think you really like this question. What is hit game in your language? What do you mean by hit game?
So our internal metric is it can reach 1 million downloads and become profitable, right? So you need a certain scale. We just set the bar there at 1 million downloads, because that's something that's, for us, it's like a good starting volume. And of course, you can get any game to $1 million if you want to spend a lot of money on it. But in the end, it needs to pay something back. It needs to be profitable for the developer and for the publisher as well. That's a hit game.
Yeah, I think 1 million download in a 30 days frame,
of course, yeah,
time frame, but the LTV is greater than CPI. I think for any publisher that would make sense, and even for you as a developer, I think it would really make sense. Do you have a recent favorite game? I think you should stick to hyper casual for this question, though.
I'm not saying what it is, but I played a game from Say Games recently a lot. Idle Arcade. Really
is it My Little Universe?
Yeah, it is.
Yesterday also we had
they did a good job on this. I'm too far into it. So
yeah, me too. Okay, I have 2 more questions for you. We have 5 more minutes. You talk about efficiency, right? But for efficiency, you need a bad minimum, right? Any kind of efficiency. So what's your ideal team structure for a hyper-casual studio from your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So how we do it internally is we have per team, we have one game lead. So that's a person that does the game design, but also does some management tasks like team management, the project management, the releases. And this is the person that is the whole end-to-end responsibility for the game. And then this person has 2 artists and 2 developers that they can flexibly shift around. So usually one game lead can handle 2 projects at the same time. And so they have 1 developer, 1 artist working on one game, and then the 1 developer and 1 artist on the other one. But this also then gives them the flexibility to say hey, okay, this project is working really well. I will pause the other one and move the people over to the one that has more potential. So this is definitely on a amount that is flexible enough to shift resources, but also doesn't overload the person doing game design, because you really still want this person not just grab one concept out after the other, but really going into detail and delivering high quality concepts that in this case their quality is a bit more important than just quantity.
Right. And my second question is, what's your view on cross-functional roles contributing to efficiency, especially in areas like art, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So we internally just hire technical game artists, right? So all our game artists work directly in Unity, directly together with the developers, and also our developers have a good understanding oftentimes of animation and art, and they just the roles are really blending into each other. They each have their responsibility. So the developer is responsible for the programming side, making the game work, and the artist is making the game look cool and pretty and feel smooth. But in the end, they're working very closely together, and it's the same project in Unity. They use the same technology there, so that's super important for us.
Right. Yeah, and also. I would say club roles like designer and producer, you don't need both. I know have one game lead like what Sunday has, who plays the role of both designer and producer and project manager. Exactly. It's all about keeping it lean and efficient, right?
Exactly. The less people you have on the project, the less communication you need to do. You have one person who owns the vision and drives things forward, and the rest really works closely together.
Okay, we have 2 more questions. 2 more minutes, so I'm going to take 1 or 2 questions. Can we get hired in your company from India? I think that totally jobs and just apply. Do you have a hard and fast rules on KPIs or revenue base on which you're looking to generate to publish a game, even if it's small on profits? Do you publish it?
It really depends. We have to look at it on case-by-case basis. Yes, we have rules. You can get in touch with our publishing department. They will tell you about it. I already mentioned some of them before, right? So we have this marketability threshold of at least 5% CTR, but it's not good yet. Better reach something above 8%, right? Or an IPM of around 60. And then the playtime and retention metrics that I mentioned, where it starts getting interesting for us. And yes, we are interested in projects that are profitable, general to say. Yeah, we don't have any real agenda behind that it must at least reach distances volume. So yeah, just contact us.
Awesome. Thanks, Christoph. I think with this, we'll end the session. Thanks so much for your time and enthusiasm in answering all the questions. It's been a pleasure. And please don't forget for the audience to rate this session from your handouts tab. And there's next session coming up in about 15 minutes. See you all. Thanks, Christoph.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye. See ya.